Today, the Zodiac is really regaining huge popularity with the masses. And one of the key differences between now and before is that now we have the internet. And that allows the layperson or the lay astrology fan to connect much more easily to hardcore practitioners of astrology who really understand the complexities of the system. However, you still find that the vast majority of people don't really understand what the zodiac is. So let's try to put a little dent into that in this video and give you a clear, concise explanation of exactly what the zodiac is. Basically, what the zodiac is a symbolic system, just like numbers are a symbolic system, or English or Spanish is a symbolic system. Every symbolic system has a kind of logic to it. And so what's the logic behind astrology in general and the zodiac specifically? Well, the basic logic at the root of all astrology is that the sky is kind of like a canvas or a parchment on which the universe itself leaves us memos and messages and notes. The language that she uses to write those notes is a symbolic lexicon that involves three types of words: planets, houses, and zodiac signs. What it does is it takes the portion of the sky that the planets move through and it divides it into 12 segments so that you can get 12 different words, so to speak, by having each one of those segments communicate a different message. Now, I'm sure you're asking, why are there 12 of them and not some other number like 13 or 59? And you're probably also asking, what determines the message or the symbolism or the meaning in any one of those given sections? So let's answer those questions next. So as we said, the zodiac is the division of the sky. So if you're going to divide the sky, what would be your most natural recourse? What would you rely on to divide the sky? The simplest thing would be the most obvious entities in the sky, the sun and the moon. And it's indeed the relationship between the movement of the sun and the movement of the moon which creates the 12 segments of the zodiac. It's very easy actually to describe this because the analog clock was designed based on the very same thing. So the clock has an hour hand which moves 12 times slower than the minute hand because, basically speaking, the sun moves 12 times slower than the moon. And so if you put a clock with the two hands facing north, let's say, or at the 12 o'clock position, and then let it run, every time the moon, the big hand, the fast hand, gets back to the top, gets back to the start position, put a mark where the small hand is. So the zodiac has 12 signs, each sign being the amount of space that the sun moves while the moon completes a full lap around the sky. And what I'd like you to note here on the side is that's what creates the 12 zodiac signs, not stars. And many people, astrologers or not astrologers, have a misconception about this, thinking that the zodiac signs are somehow created by stars, so therefore there should be 13 of them. Since there is 13 constellations we could draw if we wanted to, or they're created by stars and therefore they should be based on a star. If you just simply realize that no, they're not created by stars at all, they're created by the interplay between the sun's motion and the moon's motion, then you'll save yourself from all the heartache of those misconceptions. Basically, there's a very simple recipe that determines the symbolism of each cake slice in the zodiac. And it's a recipe with only 3 ingredients. The first ingredient is the planet that governs or rules the sign. The second ingredient is the element that the sign is made of. And the third ingredient is the modality or the kind of movement pattern that the sun has while in that segment. Each one of these three ingredients has its own type of flavor, and each sign combines the three of them in a unique way. And hence, each sign has its own symbolic flavor. Now, I'm sure you want to know more about each one of these things. What are the rulers? What are the elements? What are the modes? And why does a given sign have the particular ruler, element, and mode that it has? So let's answer those questions now. Just like people govern areas of land, the planets which act like people symbolically govern the zodiac signs which act like places. And so there are 7 primary astrological planets: the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And if you are even remotely familiar with what these planets signify, then as soon as I tell you which signs they govern, the connection between the symbolism of the planet and the symbolism of the sign will be obvious. So for example, the Sun rules Leo. I mean, if you know Sun rules identity, confidence, leadership, then isn't it so obvious what Leo represents? The Moon rules Cancer. Well, if you know anything about the Moon, it's emotional, it's private, but it's strong and bright. Mercury rules the next one, Gemini. Mercury is the planet of communication, intellect, ingenuity. Venus rules Taurus. Venus is health and beauty. Mars rules Aries. Mars is confident, bold, adventurous. And I'm sure you want to know why the Sun rules Leo and why does the Moon govern Cancer, etc. And I'll explain that in a minute. But first, let's do the symbolisms. Modern astrology has kind of thrown monkey wrenches into a lot of things about astrology, and one of them is here by introducing new planets that are astronomical bodies but aren't astrologically observable bodies. So let's just be totally awesome and pretend that that never happened. If you do it that way, you'll find that the astrological science and system is a lot simpler, cleaner, and more internally consistent. So these are simply the 4 classical elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Each one has its own symbolic flavor because of what each one is. It's very simple. Earth is solid, so it signifies solid things, tangible things, practical things. Water is reflective, so it signifies introspection and emotion. Fire reveals things, so it signifies confidence and leadership. And air invigorates and enlivens, so it signifies pleasure and interaction with things. If you know anything about the signs, then when you hear which element is found in which sign, immediately the bells will go off. Like Aries is fire, of course. And Taurus is earth, of course, right? So what makes Taurus Taurus actually is the fact that it's earth. What makes Aries Aries is the fact that it's fire and that it's ruled by Mars. Gemini is Gemini because it's air and ruled by Mercury. See, Cancer is water, ruled by the Moon. There's 3 modes, or 3 different characters to the sun's movement over the course of a year. Because remember, that's what the zodiac is. It's a division of the sun's movement. And we can call these 3 cardinal, fixed, and dual. The symbolism of each one of these modes is like this. Cardinal is really ambitious, and it sets its sights on something new and far off. The fixed mode is very high fidelity or faithful to something, to the course that it's already on, to some pre-existing commitment. And the dual mode tries to be both. And once again, the correlation between these modes and the signs is fairly obvious, although the importance of the mode is less than the importance of the element, and the importance of the element is less than the importance of the planet. Kind of like in a recipe, not everything is put into the bowl in the same amount. The greatest amount of stuff in the zodiac recipe for a sign is the planet. And then the next quantity is the element, and then the smallest quantity is the mode. So Aries is a cardinal mode. It's easy to see. Cardinal is ambitious. Taurus is a fixed mode. It's also quite easy to see. Taurus is supposed to be committed. And Gemini is a dual mode. Sometimes it tries to be one thing, sometimes it tries to be the other thing. It tries to be both. Now, there's also a very clear and simple logic behind why any particular sign has the ruler or the element or the mode that it does have. And let's discuss that now. It just has to do with the natural order of the planets, which is analogous to how far they are from the sun. So the natural order is Sun first, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. If you just take that order of the planets and then you map them to the zodiac signs, that's how the planets rule the signs. But you have to begin your mapping from Leo. The reason is that the sun, being the king of the planets, would take the highest real estate, would take the most powerful property, which is up high in the celestial north. And it would choose there between water, fire, or air. So it'll choose the highest fire sign and then just proceed in a natural order from the sun. So next to the sun is Cancer, it's the moon. And then the next in order is Mercury, and that's the next sign. And it would also go this way too. Mercury would go on this side of the sun as well to Virgo. And then after Mercury is Venus. So it would be Taurus, and also on this side is Libra. And then Mars is the next in natural order. So it's Aries, and then on this side also as Scorpio. Jupiter over here is Pisces, and over here is Sagittarius. And then Saturn at the bottom, the slowest, the last, would over here have Aquarius, and over here have Capricorn. Remember earlier I mentioned the problem and the indigestion that you'll get if you think that the signs are stars. So one of the problems here arises if you use a sidereal zodiac system or a star-based zodiac system, you're going to allow Leo to drift from celestial north, which is going to destroy the logic behind why the sun would go there and not to Aries. So there's actually 5 classical elements, not 4. But the 5th one, or space, is equally present everywhere. And so it's equally present in every zodiac sign, so it's not really considered. The other 4, earth, water, fire, and air, have affinity for cardinal directions because the cardinal directions in space have the same nature as that element does. So for example, the strongest affinity is for fire to the east because the east is signified by sunrise and the appearance of things. So fire coagulates in the east, and earth, being the heaviest element, coagulates in the south, the celestial south. Then the counterpart to fire is air. Air allows fire to do its thing. And so it's in the counterpart direction. Fire is in the east and air assembles in the west. And the counterpart to earth is water. Water allows earth to be fertile. So it coagulates in the counterpart direction to the south, which is the north. So you get a concentration of the 4 elements: fire to the east, earth to the south, air to the west, and water to the north. Now, the signs are affixed to those celestial cardinal points. Celestial north, celestial south, celestial east, and celestial west, which are defined by the sun's highest point above the equator, furthest point below the equator, and the 2 times that it crosses the equator, either coming higher or going lower. So the celestial east is defined as the point where the sun comes over the celestial horizon, which is the equatorial projection. And so the sign which is affixed to the celestial east, which is often called the vernal equinox, is Aries. And that's why Aries is fire sign, because it's the sign that's in the celestial east where fire coagulates. And then any sign which is trined from Aries will also be a fire sign. So that means that Leo and Sagittarius are going to be fire signs as a result of them reflecting Aries, which is situated in the east, which is where fire is rooted. Conversely, in the west, we have air rooted. The sign which is affixed to that cardinal direction is Libra, which is signified by the sun going below the horizon, right? That's the very symbol for Libra. And that's what's happening there. The sun is descending below the projected equator. So it's descending below the celestial horizon. And any sign which is trine to Libra, which is going to be Aquarius and Gemini, they reflect the airy qualities of Libra, which roots in the west. Similarly, the sign which is rooted in the furthest south or at the southern solstice is Capricorn. And so therefore Capricorn is an earth sign because that's where Earth is located. And any sign which is trine to Capricorn, which is going to be Taurus or Virgo, reflects that earthy nature. And finally, the sign that's rooted to the northern solstice is Cancer. And any sign which is trine to Cancer, which is going to be Scorpio and Pisces. Scorpio and Pisces are going to reflect the watery nature of Cancer. Now, another note here about sidereal zodiacs. The relationship between these equinoxes and solstices that define celestial north, south, east, and west changes in relation to the stars. So if you anchor your zodiac signs to the stars and not to the solstices and equinoxes, then you're going to break the cardinality. The cardinal signs are no longer going to be at the cardinal directions, and then you're going to break the connection that the signs have to the elements that define what their symbolism is. And now finally, let's explain why specific signs have specific modes, whether cardinal, fixed, or dual. It's all about how the sun moves in relation to its waypoints, or its tropos, which are the equinoxes and the solstices. The equinoxes and the solstices create a grand cross, which divides the sky into these 4 quadrants. And anytime the sun crosses one of those waypoints, it enters into a new quadrant. And so any sign which is built at that spot has the nature of coming into a new zone and having a big ambition. The goal is far away and one sets off towards it. So any sign that's located there has a cardinal nature to it. And these signs are Aries in the east, Cancer in the north, Libra in the west, and Capricorn in the south. Then whenever the sun in any quadrant goes into the second sign within that quadrant, it takes a fixed nature. Its movement is that it simply continues doing the same thing that it already started. And so that's why those signs which are second in their quadrant have the fixed nature. And so those are Taurus and Leo and Scorpio and Aquarius. And then when the sun gets to the third sign in its quadrant, any quadrant, then it starts to do 2 things at once. It finishes one journey and prepares for the next. And that's why those signs, which are the third in their quadrant, have a dual nature, where they try to be both fixed and cardinal at the same time, or in equal measure. And those signs are Gemini and Pisces and Virgo and Sagittarius. Now, again, if you're thinking that the signs are the stars and therefore should be affixed to the stars, you're going to break the relationship between cardinal, fixed, and dual with these equinoxes and solstices that define the very motion of the sun. So again, all of these things show that the original way that the zodiac was conceived was not as a sidereal thing, but was a thing based on the solstices and equinoxes. In other words, a tropical thing. These points are called the tropos. In my next video on this series, I want to explain the actual recipe for each one of the 12 signs and quickly show what it means about that sign. So for example, like look, Aries is ruled by Mars. It has the fire element and it's cardinal. That's why this is what its nature is like. That's why it symbolizes these things. Taurus is ruled by Venus. It's fixed and it's made from Earth. Hence, this is Taurus. But I think I'll do that in a second video because it's kind of a topic unto itself. So please subscribe so you don't miss that, and do like buttons and all that kind of stuff. Leave me a comment if you have a question about this. I'll be happy to try to reply. Thanks so much.